Bubulating, something's percolating, and now we are live. Hello, folks. My name is Walt, and I am subbing for Mike Lafferty, who had an emergency something. I don't know. I usually come up with something witty. I'm catching this on the fly. Today, we are joined by a cavalcade panel of great returning guest stars and also one new guy that we will introduce with some sort of hilarity or witticism that I'm not prepared at all today. Starting from my right to my left, we're going to start with our newcomer. Craig, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What makes you infamous? And go ahead.
I'm Craig Campbell. I'm the owner and lead designer at Nerdburger Games, and I made a game. I made a few games, but I made one in particular called Capers that won a Judges Spotlight BAMF-C, which is hard to say. It looks better
on the page than it sounds.
Yeah. And so there's that happened. It's weird, and but it was quite the honor and very flattering. And now I'm kickstarting a supplement for that game. Because it is award-winning, and I want to win all the awards, so that's the game I'm going to go with. But that's who I am, and I'm here to talk supers and a little bit about my game, and talk to these fine people and you. And here we go.
Right on. I love it. And next in the lineup, batting order, hopefully knocking one down to first base. We got Jacob Blackman. How are you, sir?
I'm terrible at sports, but what I am great at is being a freelance illustrator. Hello.
Yes. Brandon is next in the lineup. I hear you're a great shortstop.
If you mean that I can stop people, yes, I'm pretty good. I make an impromptu wall. Done that a few times. But I'm happy to be here. Happy to find out about Capers. It's an RPG I've heard about, and talk about Umbrella Academy.
Right on. And last but definitely not least, we have Lala Twiddle, a.k.a. Alice. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to plug that Supers Red has a Discord, and you can find it on discord.me/supersred.
Excellent. And not to take away from Craig's spotlight, but Supers is the role-playing game that some guy with a weird hat owns. So today we are talking about Umbrella Academy. So out of everybody in the panel, who read the comics?
I read one issue.
I must admit, I have not read any of the comics.
Craig?
I have not. No, none of them.
Yeah, I read the comics back when they came out, and the style difference between some of the casting choices on the new Netflix series and the comic, while some of them were pretty spot on, some of them were a little jarring just because of the way the art was. I really like the feel of the series. So let's we're going to try and steer away from spoilers as much as possible, because not everybody on the panel has seen all the way to the end. We've pretty much squeezed the middle. So let's talk a little bit about this. What do you guys think about the tone? The fact that all of a sudden there was turbocharged pregnancy, and now we have superpowers.
Well, go ahead, Else. Oh, it's something that I'm not sure we've ever seen the turbocharged pregnancy aspect of it, but something like this was handled a little bit with J. Michael Straczynski's Rising Stars several years ago, where suddenly there were special pregnancies under a certain circumstance, and everyone got powers. And that was a good series, and I have to say this was a pretty good interpretation as well. It was neat, it was weird, but I would find the whole situation kind of terrifying as to what happened and why it happened. I know they go into that in the comic, but they don't do it at all in the series. So
gotta save some flavor for season 2.
Exactly. And while we get to see the kids at the academy What happened to all the others? Because they mentioned there were 42.
Yeah, there were quite a few of them, and you end up with 7. So, comics.
Yeah, it says that he runs around and tries to get, all the ones that he can, and he ends up with 7, which makes you wonder who picks up the others. I'm certain, like Walt just mentioned, that's going to pop up sometime in season 2 or future. I was certainly having no basis in it. I was expecting that we'd be popping up with some of those characters during this season and as opposition or something, but we'll wait to see. I think that it has already been renewed.
Oh my God, so good. So we start off with the death of the beloved benefactor. Now, does this really work as just standard superheroes, or is this more along the lines of kind of a family drama with superheroes painted on?
I really don't feel that this is a superheroes show. I feel that it is very much a drama with superheroes as an overarching thematic flair to it. But it does not ring to me like being a superhero show, even if you want to call it a dark and gritty or noir. They do try and put a couple noir aspects into the show, which the friend that had me read a one comic out of the Umbrella Academy, which I met Hazel and Cha Cha, and I thought that the pink mask was spot on from the comic book, but the other one's mask was not reminiscent of the comic book. But I don't know. I don't think it lines up. I think that it definitely is not very superhero. And in contrast to a show like Alphas, where even though it was modern day, yeah, it was still very superhero-y. You still had all the aspects, and it wasn't a 4-color, it wasn't a 4-color superhero, but it was very much a superhero comic.
Oh my God, I loved Alphas.
I did too. I love Alphas. I will be very honest. Like, we generally rate shows on a 1 to a 5, and I have a lot of Facebook friends that are rating Umbrella Academy like 6 or 7 or out of 1 to 5. I would rate it a 3. Maybe I'm just off, but I think it's good. I don't see what the hype is about, similar to, and I might get in trouble for this, but everybody loved Avatar way more than I did.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, or Avatar: The Blue People running around in loincloths?
The Blue People. The hype was ridiculous for that, and I was not sold on it the way that most people were. But for this, I think it's enjoyable. I think it has some great aspects. I do not think that it is as unique as some of my friends are saying it is. In fact, one of the storylines that's unfolding right now, Brandon and I kind of looked at each other last night and went, "Hey, we did that in our superhero game."
Maybe they're listening in. Craig, how about some ideas on the tone of Umbrella Academy?
Well, I'm I'm only a few episodes into it, and I imagine that as the big threat, that's looming. We all know what we're talking about here. The thing that's coming up.
Tacos after 2 a.m. I got you.
Yeah, as that looms, and the characters deal with that perhaps this will become more Supers-like. But when it boils right down to it, starting out at least, this is a dysfunctional family drama where the characters happen to have superpowers, and some of them are displaying them in significant ways, and some of them aren't displaying them much at all. And we've got one character who apparently doesn't have any, although I don't trust that bit of reveal just yet. But if you are interested in seeing, if you get into like just just general dysfunction of like this weird billionaire benefactor and his oddball wife, and there's a little dude walking around in a suit and he's a monkey or a chimpanzee. There's the weirdness factor that's all there, but it's really a dysfunctional family. It's a cobbled together bunch of not orphans per se, but purchased children. They glossed over that pretty quickly too, by the way, the fact that these kids were bought.
That really bothered me. I really wanted them to go back to that.
And that's touched on in the comic too, because it's usually a source of contention among the family, that they're not a regular family. And then, you know, there's the other side of the coin where other members, you know, constantly say, you know, family is what you make it. You know, it's not necessarily all blood and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, as far as that goes, you know, they constantly refer to that, and it's what they use to try and convince people. You know, everybody outside the circle loved him. You know, everybody inside the circle despised him, and they each had their own reasons why. Speaking of the individual characters, why don't we go around the panel and let's see whose favorite is who and why.
To me, I like Space Boy, though I have no comprehension of why he's called Space Boy as a kid. They've never once given you anything that would base that name for him. It's just kind of thrown on there, but you do hear it in some of the scenes where they're being celebrated, that like Space Boy, I love you, or something like that goes off in the background. The only reason I knew who they were talking about is because I did a little bit of research into the comic book and such. I think the character that he is a well-handled Colossus at the time after Ilyana Rasputin's death. That he wants to go on, he wants to continue this dream. He's fighting to, you know, kind of lead the family on and, you know, come out as that Umbrella Academy team that they were supposed to be in some ways, focused on, well, who killed, you know, our father. And he's one of the characters that actually still thinks of him that way. And then as the show progresses and you get into him, you see, just like Colossus in that death story on Ilyana, as he breaks down and he begins to lose faith and is in a real identity crisis, which all the characters go through that identity crisis during this. But for me, he's the one that resonates, and you know, that's generally the kind of character that I like, is that Colossus kind of guy.
Nice. Brandon? I mean, I was
yes,
just looking at Brandon.
I'll go again.
Jacob.
I'm going to have to go with number 5. Dick, though he may be, you know, he's got it. He knows how to use his powers with all the teleportation. He uses them cleverly. Of all the people, all of the characters really seem to resent their powers to some reason. They don't actually like using them. That quickly becomes pretty evident. With some regard, you know, Diego doesn't seem to have a real issue, considering he's all about super accuracy with what he's throwing. But you know, Luther doesn't like hitting people. He's very pacifistic if you listen to him. And oh God, I'm forgetting everyone's names.
Vanya,
yeah,
Vanya's 7.
Yeah.
Rumor is number
2, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rumor is Alice something.
Yeah,
Diego is.
Rumor's having a
2.
serious issue with her powers, as you can clearly see.
Yes.
In that there was that one scene where it comes evident that she's been using her powers to get everything she wants in life, and it is tearing her apart. She doesn't believe she's earned anything in her life. So to that degree, I have to go with number 5 being my favorite character, is in that he embraces who he is. I just don't think he's gone as far as he thinks he needs to go, especially with the time traveling group that he's with. But I'll go into that later when everyone else has had their turn.
I would just like to throw out, I think that the kid actor on number 5 is doing a fantastic freaking job on that. You know, he's living up to that role where you see so many times that, you know, young actors just cannot pull off the serious role and give it the gravitas. Alice and I were talking about that the other night.
Yeah, he's doing an absolutely fantastic job. There's something I really want to bring up about number 5, but I'm worried that hits in the realm of spoilers, so I'd want Craig to plug his ears or something.
So before we get into spoiler territory, Craig, how about a favorite?
Well, just a note on number 5 in the actor too. I think that the nuance between him playing the younger number 5 and the older number 5 is very evident too, where he is very much the kid as the young number 5 in the flashbacks, and then he's he's significantly older in years of experience than the other characters. Even though he looks the same, but in the present day. I just partly because I have a great deal of respect for Ellen Page, and also because I find the outcast, the oddball, to be oftentimes the most interesting character. I really am drawn to Vanya. She's the classic middle child kind of syndrome of like, I'm not the oldest and most loved and the first kid, and I'm not the youngest. I'm not the baby. She's kind of she's the one who doesn't have any powers, supposedly. She's the one who feels very much like an outsider. And so, I mean, it's definitely an ensemble, but for me, she's my window into the group. It's like I'm seeing all of these people, myself being somebody who does not have superpowers. What would it be like for me to be her living in this world filled with these superpowered siblings and this crazy, weird, not really my father, but kind of my father, and so forth. So I find her really intriguing, and the job that Ellen Page is doing with it is so subdued, and there's this quiet resentment that's on her face all the time. So I've really been enjoying that.
And Alice, favorite?
Well, actually, for me, I think it has to be number 5 as well. But I think 2 characters deserve honorable mentions, so I'll jump to them instead. One, I would say that Klaus and Ben, which are currently being treated as one character.
Oh my
God,
so good.
I happen to know that Ben, will have opportunities, and in season 2, I'm assuming that he will grow because I know some stuff about him. But I think that Klaus and Ben are doing a great job, and Ben's doing a great job of being that little, voice on his shoulder, trying to create and trying to explain, well, yes, Klaus is messed up because of all these reasons. And Klaus was basically abused, and, different people respond different ways. Some of his siblings have, responded in much more healthy ways, but he just found a way to tune out the voices, and he used it. The other honorable mention that I wanted to give, though, was definitely, and I forgot, the rumor. There we go. Allison. What I like about her is that she, I think, is one of the most classic superheroes, short of the Big Brick. And I don't remember Brick's name, but Space Boy, yeah. But I don't remember his other name. Thank you, Luther. I think that other than Luther, she is the most classic superhero. And the reason being is that I think that she's got the triggers. I think she's got the demeanor. I think she also, and she still has the depth. I actually can see her being an X-Man. She has a lot of similar traits to an X-Men. So that's something I do like about her.
Right on. So with that being said, and seeing how you can take a any type of story and then layer over superpowers on top of it, this is where I grab my blunt force segue and push us into the realm of capers. So your game, Craig, won a BEMFC award. You're right, that is very hard to say. But
BAMFC. See, it sounds like you have to do it like a superhero thing. BAMFC. Think about if Nightcrawler had to say his trigger when he bamfed in. BAMFC.
I'm going to stick with Shazam. So what were some of the aspects that you think drew in the judges to get you that award?
Well, it was noted in the award write-up that that particular judge is not normally a big fan of mashups, and superpowers is one of those things that you can mash up with. You can take pretty much any type of story that doesn't have a superpowered characters in there and layer superpowers on top of it, and turn into that. And I actually take that as kind of like an extra little hidden compliment in there, is that here's someone who doesn't normally care for mashups, but then chose a mashup out of all the products that were offered last year. So that's telling about, I hope, a little bit about the game, that it has some unique qualities that don't just feel like any other mashup. Yeah, I mean, when I started designing, it was intended to be kind of like, I'm going to do a supers game, but I'm not going to do like a modern day classic capes and cowls kind of superheroes and supervillains, because there's a billion of those already out there in the RPG space. So I thought I'd find something that's a little more niche, a little more interesting, as far as like just, kind of being out of the ordinary in terms of supers. And then I was watching Boardwalk Empire, and it just kind of everything clicked in my head. And I was like, okay, what if these people, the gangster stories are interesting. It's a unique period of American history. And then I layered superhero, or not really superheroes, superpowers, because, you may very well be playing nefarious gangsters, not the heroes necessarily. And then just kind of built from there. And there came a point, even during the development, where I realized, okay, I'm not making a supers game. I'm making a gangster game that happens to be about supers. Just as, like at least the beginning of Umbrella Academy is not a super story. It is a dysfunctional family drama. So that's kind of where all of that came from.
Right on. And who doesn't want to be either Tony Soprano or Al Capone with powers? Ooh, creepy. So we have transitioning into where you're going now. You got the game coming to Kickstarter, and yes, somebody's getting after it. You have the game transitioning to Kickstarter for the next installment, which is Capers Noir. Was that easy for you to make that from Prohibition to say the very noir, gritty style of "she walked into my office"? That kind of deal.
Well, it became a question of there was enough interest from some of the backers for Capers to do supplements, and supplements are kind of a hard sell in general, because you never get as many people buying the supplements as buy the core book, and that makes them an even tougher sell for a very small indie outfit. But I figured I'll take a stab at one small supplement. I'll try to find a good hook for it. And so the supplement is effectively, it's called Capers Noir, but it is effectively a whole bunch of stuff that you can just tack into Capers if you want to. There's more character stuff and powers and new, there's some GM stuff that the GM can find useful. But then it also presents this alternate setting of advancing the storyline of Capers from the 20s in Prohibition to the 40s and the war years, and the kind of making it a crime noir story instead. So yeah, it's exactly like it's a lot of light and shadow, smoking cigarettes in the rain. There's mysteries, lower key, slow paced. Like likely when you get to the end of the story, it's like you might kind of succeed and win the day, but there's always that twist at the end where, because noir stories have that kind of desperation and cynicism to them. So that's I decided, okay, so I'll give them some fluff and some setting and something fun to do that they can play kind of a different variation on the game. But then, and the stuff and the rule stuff that's in there builds that and helps that. But then it's also very usable for the Prohibition era game.
Now, at what point do we transition to the actual war years and get some World War II paratroopers that don't need the parachute?
Well, and that's something that I've had brought up. I've had a number of people talk about, like, what else is going on in the world with these characters, these people that have these abilities. And what I've decided is that for the purposes of the Capers line, so to speak, for the main books, is that the stories are always going to be about criminals and law enforcement. That's not to say that I may not make a little PDF something down the road, or somebody else might hack it into a war story, or people rising up against the government that are doing experiments on superpowered people and those types of things. But I'm going to kind of keep it in the different subgenres of criminal stories, crime stories. So World War II is discussed in Capers Noir. It is part of the backdrop, but it's not. Your character may be playing a character who is returned from the war, who saw some things. The public is actually, like, the shift is in the 20s, the superpowered characters are seen as sort of tabloid style curiosities, and they get a lot of newspaper and magazine articles written about them, and they're usually overblown. By the 40s, there are stories of what these people have been doing on the battlefield and how truly powerful and disruptive and potentially dangerous they are. So the public starts to get a little more wary of them. So there's a progression of society as well.
Now, we had some questions from the panel. Alice, Brandon, go for it.
So I can play that kind of a story in just about any engine. What is it about your engine that is unique? What sells it? What sets the flavor? And why should I pick it up?
Well, no pressure.
No pressure. Well, the game mechanic you're referring to, yes, by the engine. Talking about
the engine mechanics.
The game mechanics.
D6, D10, etc.
Playing cards, no dice. So the game mechanic is built around flipping playing cards and using that as your randomizing element. And you're flipping, without getting into too much detail, but basically you'll have a number of cards that you're able to flip. You'll be wanting to get higher is better, and you're flipping cards to one at a time and deciding whether you want to stick with that card or try for something that's going to give you a better result. The pip value determines success versus failure, and the suit determines degree of success or failure. So you could get a very high card with a bad suit. So you're going to succeed, but it's not going to be very good. So do you gamble and flip another card?
You bring up a great, I did a little research into your system, and I knew that it was card-based. But you bring up a good point, because like we have the old 1990s Deadlands, which is a card-based system also. So what is that gambling element? What aspects of this engine should really sell new players on wanting to play it?
I think one of and first of all, Deadlands is one of the inspirations for this. I love Deadlands and its use of playing cards and poker hands. I believe
Falkenstein, another one of them.
Yeah, and in Deadlands, hucksters actually made poker hands by drawing cards and getting the best poker hand they could to determine their effect. This Capers doesn't mimic any specific game. But it does feel a bit like blackjack in that you are, whether you're going to hit again, hit or stand. And the thing that I found that sets it apart quite a bit is that is a very engaging mechanic at the table, because think about, like, oftentimes you roll your dice, you report what it is, determine whether it's a success or failure, narrate what that means. Maybe there's a damage roll or a soak roll or whatever, or hit location, and then you move on. But the dice roll and it's one time. Whereas with the card flip, it's a question. Like every time you flip a card, there's a tense little game that takes place. And I've noticed, it wasn't planned, but I noticed it very quickly at the table with players, is that when it's somebody else's turn, everybody's paying attention to what they're doing, because everybody has advice on whether or not they should keep flipping those cards, because everybody's kind of keeping track. Well, I know you've got a lot of face cards left in your deck, and that changes your how you approach playing as well, because the deck has a memory. As you flip through cards, the remaining cards to be flipped could be higher or lower. It could be skewed one direction or the other just by what you've previously flipped.
When do you reshuffle that deck?
It's left a little bit in the hands of the GM, but the idea is typically that after you've gone through a few smaller minor encounters where you have flipped some cards, but maybe not a lot, or after like any really kind of significant major, particularly if it's a combat where there was a lot of card flipping, then you can reshuffle again. I tend to try to let the decks get down to about halfway before I before I make people reshuffle. But there's also, in the game, there's a resource that you have to spend called Moxie. And one of the things you can spend Moxie on as a player is to shuffle your deck back up. So if you've blown through a bunch of your good cards into your discard and the GM isn't ready to let everybody reshuffle yet, you can do it for yourself.
That's a nice way of interpreting hero points. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if Jacob had any questions, because we hadn't heard our professional illustrator in a bit.
No, actually, I think he's explaining very well. Good on him.
Right on. So when do you guys hit Kickstarter?
Capers Noir goes to Kickstarter on Tuesday, March 12th. Should be about 9 a.m. Eastern, assuming that I press the button quickly enough. And because there's always like these little steps, like every time I always think I'm going to press the button 2 times, but no, they make you like read a bunch of stuff and check a box that you understood it, and because there's terms and conditions and all that. But yeah, so about 9 a.m. on Tuesday, March 12th. So, and it'll run for about a month.
On my birthday.
Nice. Happy birthday. And then the Kickstarter has backer levels in there for getting the original game too. So you know, even if the Noir thing doesn't strike your fancy, you can just get capers.
Is there a birthday tier for Jacob?
There's not currently one, but we could talk about designing one. What might be in a birthday tier?
That would be up to Jacob. It's his birthday.
Well, let's see. PDF and digital copies. You're going to want to have a special deck made with all the cards, with all the characters on them. Yeah, there we go.
And the deck could be illustrated by Jacob.
Oh, there you go. That's nice.
Oh, look at pretty.
That's good. That's class right there.
Yeah, already. All the face cards are illustrations of NPCs from inside the game. All 4 of the jacks are likenesses of backers. They all got to create a character to become a jack. So they become like each of those 4 became, you know, their character is kind of an important character in some criminal organization or law enforcement, and they're on the cards.
So, are there any mechanics that tie into the time period specific, or go with that theme of the fact that it's a cops versus robbers game?
The mechanical system is overall kind of I don't want to say generic, but it's universal in that it allows you to kind of do everything. You can run a combat, you can do social stuff, you can do infiltration, discovery, and all those sorts of things. Capers does have a set of rules in it for standoffs, which is kind of a crime story, you know, where everybody's got their guns out. In this case, they've got their guns and their powers out, and it's those tense seconds before everything starts hitting the fan. And there's a little play out of card flipping and what you do with those cards that can mimic that preparation for the fight that's about to break out. And then in Noir, Chris Sneezak helped me write investigation rules, kind of in the vein of Gumshoe and some of the other more recent investigative focused RPGs, where, you know, nothing shuts an investigation down faster than using any old standard set of rules. And, well, I failed my check, so now we don't have a clue. Or you build a system where that the clues are going to keep coming, everything's going to keep moving forward, and the checks actually affect other things, and they cause complications and problems and those sorts of things. So there's a set of rules for that.
Right on. Now, in standard investigative type games where you're the law and you're tracking people down, you know, you have a lot of games that push an investigative mechanic or an investigation mechanic toward finding the bad guy. So if you're the bad guy, do you have mechanics in your game for confounding the law?
Not specifically, but that's easily enough. I think one of the things that you could do is just, you know, through role playing and choices, and then the GM says, okay, well, this is going to make this harder for my characters, you know, for the NPCs to come get you, or there's not specifically something like that in there. Although it is worth noting that the investigation is not necessarily you playing the law enforcement character, although you can play criminal or law, because there's plenty of times when the bad guys are investigating other bad guys. So that all comes into play, but not specifically confounding. That's an interesting idea. Might have to.
I think that's actually a pretty cool one.
Yeah, just throw me in the credits somewhere. I'll be fine.
Put him in the artist credits, even if he doesn't do art, because I think he forgets himself on his own stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that,
God.
you know, Walt forgets credits for himself on his own stuff, so it's only right that other people put him in credits. That way, he gets it somewhere.
You guys are checks in the mail. You guys are fantastic.
As a question on this, for like hero system, then mutants and masterminds on the crunch spectrum, all the way down to games that are extremely light, like a Fate style superhero. Where is Capers falling in that? And when during those gunfights or whatever, how are you taking damage? In hero system, you have basically a hit point system or multiple hit point systems, where in supers you have much more of a story aspect of how is this affecting our hero and what is he starting to lose? How do these kind of things work in Capers?
For damage, I kept it straightforward with kind of a hit system, but also the card flipping also comes into play where when you're doing things, you can be there's not just damage. There's you can add on boons or deal with complications, and those things could be like physical problems that your character could get blinded for a turn, or have some things happen to them as they're playing. That it isn't just straight up hits. There's there's a little bit more of all of that. As far as the rules go, I guess I would venture to say that it's kind of middle ground as far as level of crunchiness. There's 40 powers in the game, and each of them has a standard effect with it, and then each of them has a series of boosts that are like extra things that you can do that make the power cooler or more versatile or do something related. So even if you just take one power, you end up with a few boosts to go with it. So you have, even at a starting level character, you have a few cool things to do. And if you really go crazy on a lot of taking a lot of powers across character progression, it could get pretty complex. But I don't think you ever add too much at a time that it would be hard to keep track of. There's the risk of analysis paralysis is there depending on who, like how well a person handles having a lot of choices. But you're only adding a few choices every time you advance your character.
Do you have a demo play that is broadcasted online somewhere, and will you be linking that to your Kickstarter? And if not, will you be doing a demo play for streaming for people to watch for this next Kickstarter?
There's a demo adventure out there that I did for Capers. Actually, there's a couple of them, but I could give you guys links to that. It's at Don't Split the Pod. One of them is at Don't Split the Podcast Network. We did a multi-part episode there. I'm going to have it's 2 hours. I guess they'll probably release it as a full just a straight up 2 hours. I recorded a play, a 2 hour game with some folks that's going to come out probably unfortunately, it went not till about halfway through the Kickstarter, but that will be specifically Capers Noir. It is a noir story that starts up with an explosion and an investigation into that explosion.
Now, my big question is, have you ever been doing one of these play tests and you just had a player that was so good at being a criminal that you had to call the cops, or felt like you were in jeopardy at the table?
No, I have not.
All right, so they're not doing it
so far.
All right, so we all volunteer because we're professional criminals. We can do this like nobody's business. It's fine. Any special tiers that you'd like to talk about before you guys go live? Anything fun or do you have like one of those golden ticket tiers where it's this is the best of everything?
There's a few tiers that have to do with whether you want Noir or the original game or both together and that sort of thing. And then there's a kind of two quote unquote premium tiers that are, one allows you to create what I refer to in the game as an everyday Joe or Jane. So you a lot of the NPCs that get developed are specifically criminal and law enforcement type characters, but there are regular people too. So you can get all the game stuff plus create a character of your own that will be in there as a super powered kind of an everyday person. Like what happens when a bike mechanic is has a superpower, or a teacher, or so there's creating that. And then Capers Noir also has a bit of a horror side to it. It's kind of a dark and spooky kind of stuff. There's actually ghosts and revenants and things like that are part of the game, because the classic example of the World War II caused such destruction that it thinned the veil so to speak, and the things that the dead things have kind of come out and creeped around. And I like the idea of, you could kick off an investigation by questioning your first witness, and that witness is the ghost of the deceased.
Ooh, nice.
And then, so for the backer level thing, there's an opportunity to create you'll be of a monster type that's in the game, but kind of give it a unique personality and backstory and everything. So you might have a ghost that is looking to accomplish certain things, or something that's some revenant shambling thing that's out for revenge of some sort, or whatever the backer wants to do.
Right on. Now, we talked about like your excellent playing cards. In this new Kickstarter, will other suits be open for people to get their faces in the deck?
I'm not doing another deck of cards with this one. The upside to Capers and how being a full size game. This is it was 160 something pages. The supplement is going to be 50 something. Is that I had so many NPCs, so many criminal organizations that I was describing, that you had a lot of NPCs to choose from. So for Capers Noir, there is not going to be illustration levels, unfortunately.
That's okay. We don't judge. Now, I know that I speak for the panel in this, in that I have my own probably insight onto what this is. But what exactly is on a Nerdburger, and where can I get one?
A Nerdburger is whatever you want to be in it, as long as it's nerdy, I suppose, or geeky, or whatever. I guess some people have very specific definitions of those words. Some people consider them relatively interchangeable. There's if you want to get one with cheese or one with the works, I actually just kicked off a Patreon with the hopes of doing like a quarterly PDF of kind of like a zine kind of thing of like 10, 12 pages that will be game content. It'll probably be a fair amount of caper stuff, but it's one of these things where I might be able to explore some of those things we were talking about that aren't crime and law based, where I might do like a World War II thing or a 1930s carnival kind of treatment, or what about do a modern day version with using the normal rules, but it's modern day and your sidekicks, you're all the sidekicks. So maybe present some powers that aren't quite as super, that are just like but that would make for just kind of a fun game to do that, like little mini settings, mini packets of rules and different variations, along with other stuff, because there's the possibility of creating new stuff for Die Laughing or for Murders and Acquisitions, the other games.
Nice. And in this zine, there will be different because I haven't eaten yet and I'm hungry.
There will be different what? I'm sorry?
Hamburger recipes, Nerdburger recipes.
I don't have immediate plans for that, but if there's enough demand, yeah. if it gets Patreon backers, sure, I'll throw a recipe in there. I'll make something up, or I'll just steal it from somewhere.
Right on. So if people want to stalk you on the internet, what's the best ways to find you, and how can we hear about your the launch of the Kickstarter when it goes live?
I'm at Nerdburger Craig on Twitter. You can go read all about game stuff at nerdburgergames.com. Particularly look at like the homepage and the contact page, which also pushes you toward here's a Discord channel and all this sort of thing, and the Patreon. And then you can buy the games at drivethroughrpg.com, but not Capers. Don't buy Capers there, because you'll get a better deal with the Kickstarter on starting on March 12th. And I can get you guys a link to share with folks like on the day of, and just spread that around.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Now, before we do some of the sign-off magic that we typically do in announcing our own Patreon and Discord and what projects we have coming up, we need to pour out a 40 for a tragic loss in the entertainment community. Brandon, did you want to take this up?
I think you're probably much better equipped with all of your knowledge on this kind of subject.
So an actor from the 80s, the star of Airwolf, the seminal series about a normal Sikorsky helicopter that apparently has hidden guns and a turbo boost. Jan Michael Vincent has passed away. He was pretty influential on a lot of us growing up during that time as the strong, quiet, reflective hero who was just trying to do the good thing about keeping the nasty military helicopter from the military-industrial complex. But he really did have that quiet professional quality to him that even when you were in the middle of 10, 15, 20 years later, you're in the middle of Iraq or Afghanistan, and you're all sitting around a bunch of rocks, and somebody goes, "Do you remember Airwolf?" And then sparks a 2-hour conversation about how everybody wanted to be Jan Michael Vincent because of, reasons. But I mean, 10 seconds of silence for Jan Michael Vincent. I can't wait 10 seconds. I'm impatient. So transitioning once again with my blunt force segue, let's get everybody out there to get Capers Noir coming to Kickstarter. What was it, March 8th, 18th? I'm sorry?
12th.
March 12th. I'm terrible.
Tuesday the 12th.
My birthday.
Don't you even remember Jacob's birthday?
Whoa!
I was very distracted by the burgers.
Well, we all rely on Facebook to remind us now. Now that I'm friends with Jacob on Facebook, I'll just wait for Facebook to tell me it's Jacob's birthday, and I'll be like, "Oh, cool, Capers just launched."
I'm right there with you, Alice. It's like, oh, look, it's a friend's birthday.
And now your birthday will remind me that Capers launched, and I'll have to go look for it.
Right on. Can you tell us a little bit about not only the Supers Discord, but maybe pimp the Banff Discord as well?
Absolutely. So for Supers Red, we have an official Discord. It is you can find us at discord.me/supersred. And as for the Banff Discord, you can find it on the Twitter feed as well as Banff's site for the Discord server.
Excellent. Jacob, any new projects coming up?
I just had a new superpowered Legends character released. Doomstar is a evil galactic tyrant who wants to destroy other evil galactic tyrants so that he will be the only evil galactic tyrant.
There's a lot of evil galactic tyranny going on.
As evil galactic tyrants are wont to do.
Indeed. So
everyone's the hero of their own story.
For his superpowers, he has plunged his hands into a powerful generator, and now his hands have been disintegrated and replaced with super powerful cosmic energy hands that he blasts his other evil galactic tyrants with.
Is that good for massage or not good for massage?
It's not good for massaging.
Okay, so we're going to stay away from that.
Depends on what SPF you're using at the time.
Oh my goodness! So please visit our own Patreon for the Banff podcast and make sure to sign up so that you can spur other shows such as actual plays and other interviews such as the Indie Creator Spotlight and having guys like Craig on because we had to bribe him with my brain is just not working today.
Sweet
Did you bribe him
burgers.
with jelly beans? I know that you
Oh, I could have gotten jelly beans.
Lay a trail. Yeah. Oh, he didn't lay a trail of jelly beans out for you. Walt, you're slacking.
It's true. It's because I got that extra hour of sleep. I'm chill. So
apparently.
Okay, Walt, well, I can tell you I've never encountered an adventure module that has a recipe for burgers in it. I have encountered an adventure module that has a recipe for waffles in it. If you hunt down the old Zombie Orpheus module called like the Mask of the Shadow or Death's Mask, or I believe it's one of those. It has a waffle recipe in the back.
Oh my God, this is going to happen. This is definitely going to happen. Is it just waffles or chicken and waffles?
It's just waffles, but
that's fine.
I'm sure you can find a good chicken recipe to go with it.
So on that note, and seeing as I'm starving, Alice, Brandon, Jacob, thank you very much for coming out as always. We really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing an hour of your time. Greg, thank you very much for coming out and talking about Capers and Capers Noir. I am hungrily waiting for your Kickstarter now so I can pick up both and then torture my friends with several games, which we will probably broadcast online because, that's how we roll.
Thank you.
I'd love to play in that.
I think that means that's how we draw. There's no rolling dice in that game.
Thank you, folks, for bringing me on here. I had a great time.
Brandon's really on that button today.
He's like laser focused. It's amazing. And Craig, if we point our spotlight at Capers again, could we get you to come back on and maybe throw some commentary in?
Oh, heck yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So on behalf of Mike Lafferty and the BAMF podcast and our esteemed panel, my name is Walt, and BAMF, we are out.